Good afternoon, merch hunters. Ricky here, and I want to talk about One Piece Odyssey. Let's do a two-part review, one without spoilers, and then halfway through the video we'll do spoilers. So, first things first, I want to say that the game looks great. There's nothing wrong with the graphics. If you're someone who says the graphics are bad, I'm just going to have to heavily disagree with you. Everything down from the world, the base island you start off at Wofford, and how you go to Alabasta, Dressrosa, Marineford, Water 7, all those worlds are great. Okay, so for sure the graphics isn't really like anything I have an issue with in this game. Every single attack animation from the Straw Hats is fantastic. Everything Luffy does specifically is amazing. Nami has some crazy moves. Robin has some fantastic moves. Both of them are very, very well animated in the chest region, so you gotta get used to that if you don't like that, because just about every chance they get to zoom in on Robin or Nami's boobs, like, they're just gonna do it. Okay? And like a lot of some of Nami's moves just straight up start right there on the camera and then go up to her face. Sanji and Zoro, both a really intense play styles that in a way kind of just don't amount to anything, because you're gonna rely on like their main two moves or just whatever move you have that costs the most. I think it's FP or TP. Whatever move costs the most TP is probably just going to be the one that will eviscerate all your opponents, specifically when using Sanji and Zoro, because that's going to be like your Purgatory Onigiri or your Diable Jambe Concaser. And those moves are, like I said, they are going to eviscerate your opponents. Now, really the only difference between moves, we're going to get to Usopp in a second because he's amazing. The difference between Sanji and Zoro's moves that matter and don't matter as much is that, like for Zoro, for example, some of his moves only hit one target and some of his moves are not ranged. So, obviously his 1080-pound Phoenix is going to be ranged. And Sanji has a couple moves that allow him to leave his little area and then go into the next area and go back to his area. So that's pretty useful. And then he also has moves that hit a bunch of people at once, just like Zoro does. And those two moves are pretty much the moves that you're going to be using the most, or at least you eventually will, right? Now, Usopp's gameplay, as far as like in combat, I think he is phenomenally crafted. He has moves that pertain to enemies that are stupider than normal. So like if you're fighting a Kung Fu Dugong as Usopp and you use like the move he used to beat Mr. Four or Perona, like the big hammer, because they're dumber than normal, they are going to practically get one shot by that. Now, all of his other moves, not only do they look good, but they're all incredibly useful and for like a multitude of different reasons. Like some of them make it so that the enemies miss, some of them hit multiple enemies while he can stay away. And I'm going to finish off combat with Chopper in a second here, and unfortunately the spoiler section will contain Frankie and Brooks gameplay, so you'll have to go there first, and I'll try to put that at the beginning of the spoilers. So one thing about this game is that combat for the Straw Hats, depending on how many you have at the time, but I think you can only have 4 active members at once, right? And then you start off in certain areas. So there's like different combat nodes where like Luffy will be in combat node 1, Zoro and Sanji will be in combat node 2, and then Nami will be in her own combat node, and then, Usopp or Chopper or Robin will be in their combat node. Your enemies will do the same when they spawn accordingly onto the map. Now, Luffy might spawn with 3 enemies in his combat node versus Zoro only getting 1. So that's kind of like where combat urgency takes place. However, the problem with the combat in this game, which to me immediately starts it off at -1 point. Like if this game were to start out as a perfect game, right? It's already going to go down to a 9 because of combat, because the way the combat works is that you simply one-shot everyone. And I don't think they really thought through how combat's supposed to work, since the Straw Hats are also complex and ridiculously strong. I feel like the story, in the story of the game, they get nerfed, right? And this is not really spoiler, since like all the trailers already show this happening. They lose their main power and they have to go to all these different memories and stuff to get their powers back, which is why you start out in Alabasta and then Water 7, then Marineford, then Dressrosa. And it is very well laid out, and the story itself is not that bad. I bought the collector's edition on PS5, so I got my game, and then you also get a Luffy statue with Lim. She is the custom character, not custom character, but she's the character centered. This game is centered around, and I'll get to a story portion of the video in a second here, but what I want to talk about for how combat was supposed to be centered, which what I think the original vision of the developers was when you get to Wofford, and everyone's seen the cutscene because it's the very first trailer released. You basically get all your power sucked out by Lim. Like, she comes up to them and takes their powers via touch, and that's not necessarily a spoiler, so I'll keep the rest of that for the spoiler section of the video. Now, you start out as a weaker version of the Straw Hats. You're basically pre-time skip all over again. You don't really have much moves to work with. However, as long as you're using Luffy on your team or Zoro, you are going to be clearing people. And the more you level them up, the easier the game gets, especially because Luffy just starts out with Gum Gum Gatling, or he unlocks it in like the first 2 missions, right? And the problem with Gum Gum Gatling is not only does it hit really hard, but it has a chance to stun enemies, and it also hits multiple enemies at once. So you literally do not need another move for a very large portion of the game. And you unlock a large and wide variety of moves, especially for Luffy. And you get different combat cubes to level each one up to level 3. And where Chopper comes into gameplay is that he can heal you mid-combat, which is amazing on paper because it just feels like how Yuna does it in Final Fantasy X, or I think her name is Veronica, and her sister, I forget her sister's name, but in Dragon Quest XI. And their heals are, they're either very powerful or very not powerful, whereas Chopper's heal is always good. It's always great. So, unfortunately, as long as you have Chopper on your team, Luffy and Chopper, or Zoro and Chopper, you're not going to fail a mission ever. You just don't stand the chance to lose. And then all of a sudden, with your pretty much medium par leveled character, because after a while, unless you just love one-shotting things, you're going to just rush through combat, or you're going to avoid the creatures altogether, because the creatures on the map don't just spawn you're walking and the screen breaks like Final Fantasy, or you're walking and then the like Pokemon. They're physically there on the map, and you have to walk into them or they have to walk into you, right? And although, again, great idea on paper, but after one-shotting the 500th enemy and I still have not leveled up, I'm good. Then all of a sudden you're fighting the boss, and I won't reveal bosses till spoiler section, but each time you fight a boss, it's you're almost about to lose completely, or you might lose and have to start over again. And again, that's not really frustrating, but that's really the only hard part of the game. So then, by the second time you do that, or have that happen to you rather, you are very much going to overlevel your character. I did it accidentally, to be honest, because I kept Luffy in my party always. So anytime Luffy touched something, they were going down. And then it happened with Nami, because Nami's fighting style really does a number on the enemies in a way that you just have to see for yourself. And so the combat to me kind of misses for that reason alone. Now, going on to the story part without spoilers, I'm just going to say the story is great. However, I subtract 2 points automatically because one of the characters you are introduced to, and you're not introduced to many new characters, right? You're only introduced to 2, and you see them both in the trailer. Lim and Adio, and right away one of them is quite obviously the villain, and he makes it clear every single time he speaks, and from the very first time he speaks, it's just oh, okay, and it's just kind of annoying, right? Because even in the trailers, you can kind of tell Adio is going to be a villain. And I know that's kind of a spoiler for people who haven't played the game yet, but I promise you, the second he talks, you're gonna be you're the main villain. So, sorry about that if I spoiled you. I'll throw a warning up for later into the editing. But anyways, the story also falls apart rapidly after a couple levels, and the main reason being is that most of the plot points just kind of nullify each other out because they don't matter. And when you're in Alabasta, for example, you have to relive everything. However, they immediately tell you, like, oh, the memory is distorted due to the way the Land of Memoria works, which is what you're in, like some data world. So you're expecting an authentic trip to Alabasta, and what you get is just walking back and forth across Alabasta, like at least 3 or 4 times before you even see any actual real and meaningful combat. You do a series of fetch quests, and that's really about it. And then the same thing repeats in Water 7, and then Marineford, I'll say, is amazing. That is so good. And then Dressrosa is just like not good. It's not fun. If you're thinking you're gonna find good side villains that end up surprising you as bosses, there's absolutely none. And that really disappointed me, because you end up just fighting Marines, random palace guards, a banana gator, another banana gator, 3 banana gators. Like, it's just that over and over again, like to a very annoying degree. And now basically I can't talk about anything else but taking it into the spoiler section. So rating this game without spoilers, it's basically already at a 6 out of 10. So now let's get into the spoiler section. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I understand, click off the video. It's really, I'm not mad at you. So spoilers, 3, 2, 1. First spoiler right off the jump. Frankie and Brooke are not playable until the very end of the game, when it really doesn't matter anymore. You only get to use them you get to use Frankie in Marineford, and then you get to use Brooke in Dressrosa, and you don't really use them for the first at least 20 hours unless you are absolutely like blazing a trail through the game, not doing side quests, not picking orbs up off the ground, which we'll get to in a second. Like, for the first at least 20 hours of the game, you literally cannot play as Frankie or Brooke. So if you're a Frankie or Brooke fan, or you at least want to play as the full Straw Hat kit, you can't. Now, there's an overworld in the game where you can, at any point in time, switch out to a member of the Straw Hats between Luffy, Nami, Usopp, Zoro, Sanji, Chopper, and Robin. You can pick from them to be one character out in the overworld at all times, and you can do that rapidly for free. It's pretty fun at first, right? Then you quickly notice that it actually just evolves to picking up orbs off the ground unique to each Straw Hat. Usopp has to shoot them off a ledge. Chopper has to like sniff them out. No, Chopper has to go through little holes in the walls to get through to get them. And then Robin has to just go, hey, look, there's a book on the ground. Sanji, hey, look, there's a fish on the ground. Nami, oh, look, I dropped my money, but it's someone else's berry. So that's pretty funny, I'll admit. But, oh yeah, Zoro just cuts doors. Woo, you know? Luffy just stretches to pick up regular items off the ground, or out of reach items. So the overworld thing is drastically overrated. It is not fun. It does not feel good to play. Like, you don't feel cool and unique being each Straw Hat, picking up little orbs off the ground. And you do that more than combat. You do that more than side missions, and you do that more than story mode. Now, I want to dive into the combat again, but this time talking about the bosses. Now, there are 4 bosses in the game that are like giant monster titans that you have to fight, like a fire one, a water one, a wind one, and I think like a lightning one or an earth one. And like the very first one was cool because he like beat the crap out of you, and you're like, oh wow, this is gonna be a hard game. You fight the second one. Oh no, it's ice. The second one is ice, not water. But when you fight the ice one, you kind of demolish him depending on who you have active, and it's very obvious like right away who you need to have active, and I believe it's Sanji. And then if you just have Chopper healing Sanji over and over again, you just wipe the boss. It's like he's hard, yeah, sure, but also you get Audio as like a traveling companion for each one of those 4 bosses, because you have to go to temples to unlock like the different, like Alabasta, Eni's Lobby, and all that stuff. So right away, like Audio kind of clears the boss for you as well, especially if you heal everyone in the group, because it counts for Audio too, and that just makes the game that much easier. Like, there is really no challenge except for the bosses. Like, I can't stress that enough. And sometimes the bosses, like, I talked to some other friends about the game, and they were outright frustrated by the Titan bosses because they were tired of one-shotting enemies, so they didn't really level up beyond what they needed to beat Alabasta. Then you get to the next Titan and you get crushed, and it's just annoying. And all this time, it's like quite obvious that Audio is the villain, and it's not good. And he also has a very bad devil fruit. His devil fruit is the grab fruit, and it just summons 2 gigantic energy gauntlets, which, you know, most devil fruits don't operate that way, right? But like, yeah, so he summons these 2 giant energy gauntlets, but then he can also use his mind to just take hold and control small animals or things that have a weaker will than him. And like, I get it, you grab hold of them to make them work, but it just doesn't like sit, it doesn't land well and doesn't sit well. And then also he can use his grab fruit to create a barrier like Bartolomeo. Just, you know, none of it makes sense. And like I said, the fruit is very badly implemented and really only serves to make him broken in certain spots that either benefit you or completely derail you. And so like I said, about the second temple in the game, which would be, I'd say, roughly 15-20 hours in, you already know he's the main villain. Like, you clearly get it. Like, Robin's giving him side eyes and glances, and it's just like, meh. So there's an item equip system in the game as well that helps combat make you even more broken. Like, you equip a ring on that gives you like plus 1,000 attack, and later on in the game you can further enhance these items via Robin using like an arm machine that requires someone with 4 arms to use, go figure. And it's not the worst system. I actually quite enjoy the item crafting itself and choosing what buffs I want to go on my character, but then when you put the buffs on your character, you rapidly see how it makes it even harder to level, because you are just destroying the fodder over and over again, be it like a really well-designed animal. Like, I really like the way the animals look, but it doesn't really matter. And then, you know, you got your Marines, your Palace Guards, your CP0, your Blugori. You don't really get a big variety of enemy. And furthermore, let's say you liked an enemy, like I really like the penguins, but the further you level up, the penguins change. And if you don't get their data cube, which is like how you fill up the logbook, then you just miss out on it entirely, and it just kind of sucks. It doesn't feel good, you know? And there's no trophy for completing that logbook, so it's just entirely optional, up to you. And furthermore, Luffy has like a hockey sense he can use in the overworld, right? It doesn't really matter until you realize, like, oh, I have no entries in my logbook. Then you go back to the places where you fought people in key locations, and sure enough, you use the hockey sense and they're there. Like, they're data cubes. You pick them up, and again, there's no trophy, no achievement for this. It's just completely optional, up to you. And sometimes they'll be in the most random spots, like when you met them the first time versus when you actually fought them. So, you know, that also takes away from it. Like, for example, to the life of me, I cannot find Law's data cube in Dressrosa. Like, I just can't. I don't know if it's there or you don't get it, but I found Cavendish's quite easily. Like, the minute I got done fighting him as Hakuba, I did the hockey and I got them both. Now, a breakdown of every level. Alabasta is downright awful. It sucks, and it's the very first level you have to do. Like, you have to, and you can't go past it, so it's just a slog. That is the first 20 hours of the game. I repeat, the first 20 hours of the game, you are walking back and forth in Alabasta. You don't fight a single Baroque Works member except for Mr. 2. Not even Mr. 1, just Mr. 2. And then then you quickly go to fight Crocodile. And when I mean quickly, I mean very, 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 very slowly. Work your way up to fighting Mr. 2 and some other Baroque Work people, and then all of a sudden you're fighting Crocodile. And after a very annoying temple slog down to the ruins of Alabasta, I think in Alubarna, you get to do a couple little like puzzle solving things. You fight some Kung Fu Dugongs, and then that's when you ultimately fight Crocodile and beat him. And the ending to the fight is phenomenal, but the fight itself, I cleared him really fast, like almost impossibly so. But then you get to Enies Lobby, and you fight Kaku for the first time, and Luffy laughs at Kaku. It's a pretty funny moment, but just to even do anything in Water 7, you know, like a lot of the times you have to switch sides you're on via the Yagura Bulls, which in the trailer made it seem like you could just pick one up by your will and go. No, there's only 4 spots to go to, and it's an automatic travel path, kind of like a flight path in World of Warcraft. You fight Kaku, and if you have not leveled up very well, because there's also not many chances to level up in the game after Alabasta, and furthermore, like when you want to travel back to a world, let's say you really liked Alabasta, if you want to travel back, good luck, because you don't really have many options to do that, and you don't really have many choices to do that. Like, The only choice you get is right before Marineford. So the problem with Alabasta and Water 7 is that right when you're done with them, you have pretty much, that's like your only chance to like go back and experience them, and you don't really notice that until you go to Marineford and it tells you like this is your only chance to go back and do that stuff. And if you wanted to go back and do that stuff and you just were like really excited to go to Marineford, like some of my friends told me they were, Marineford is just a one and done battle. That's it. And it's great. I even have it on my game channel linked in my description, like the whole battle part 1 and 2. It's fantastic. They did a really good job with that. And the level is appropriate, the difficulty is appropriate, all that good stuff. You don't really have a chance. I don't think you get a single chance to craft any items to help you, so you only go in there with what you got. So that makes it even more stressful if you just jumped in there. Like I went in there after going back to Water 7 and quickly getting bored of Water 7, crafting some healing items, and I went straight into it. It was great. Perfect experience. I loved it so much. Then after that, you're immediately shot into Dressrosa. Actually, I think you actually have to go back to Alabasta and Water 7 again, and then you go to Dressrosa. But regardless, either way, it's just not fun. Like I said, the first 20 hours, Alabasta, back and forth, it's just not good. Then Water 7 is just a bunch of repeated fetch quests, and they're done in a way that are not fun. And the side missions in the game are all terrible. Like, they're not good. Like, finding bounties, like, hunting down, like, wanted people for the bounties, they're not fun. Like, the crafting itself is not fun because you cannot choose where the items spawn. They're just random spawns, so you just have to constantly be picking up the orbs. Like, over and over again, you need to pick up these orbs, and I mean over and over again. It's going to be the only thing you really do, and you do it way more than combat and way more than side quests, and you do it way more than experiencing the story. And again, like, I cannot stress it enough with Audio, how he's like obviously outward the villain, trying to just not be the villain, and it doesn't work well. It's not written well, and his devil fruit is not implemented well. Lim, however, she's a little queen. I love her. She was very charming throughout the whole game. Unfortunately, with all I said, I bring the game down one more point, and now it's at a 5 out of 10. And the ending of the game, and this is rapid spoiler warning just in case you wanted the first part of the spoilers, but you don't want the ending of the game revealed. The ending of the game is basically 3, 2, 1, now's your chance, go. The ending of the game is basically revealing that basically like an ancient weapon prototype wannabe thing is what Audio was going for the whole time, and the ancient kingdom of Waford was wiped from the sky, and all the Skypians on that island were persecuted and killed by the world government, including Audio's friend or something along that line. And somehow Smoker knows Audio because the whole time Audio was also a double agent for the Marines, although he was always going to double cross the Marines, and that's why the Gorosei and CP 0 are involved in the game, and it just doesn't make any sense, right? It's just kind of just blah. Like, you could literally do the whole game without the Gorosei being there and without Smoker being there, and it's the same experience. Now, the ancient weapon in question is a giant robotic flying skyfish that shoots lightning beams, kind of like what happened in Lulusia Kingdom. So that right away is just like, okay, well, we kind of know what some of the ancient weapons are, I guess. Like, it's like almost as big as a Sea King, but it's robotic and it flies. And Audio uses his like mind grab control of the devil fruit to pilot it. And like at that point in the game, you have Frankie, and Frankie can tank that thing by himself as long as you level him up enough. And that's what I did. Accidentally, mind you. I just fought that boss once and absolutely destroyed it with just Frankie and some healing and Chopper. And, you know, some Luffy action here and there. But overall, the hardest boss in the game was Rob Lucci. And then going from there, in Dressrosa, Don Quixote was kind of hard, but not really at all. Like, Pika, to me, was a little bit harder than Don Quixote. But going through the whole thing, what I liked about Don Quixote is that he came out of nowhere, even though you always knew it was going to be him fighting. Like, you always knew he was the final person you were going to be fighting. But, like, his fighting style was very well represented in the game. And I just like that little piece right there. But like Law's involvement in the part where you get Corazon, like all of that just kind of like fell flat, especially after having slogged through most of the game. And there's like a level up system that doesn't really matter for the moves. Like, it does not matter at all. I didn't even realize that I wasn't doing it until Dressrosa. Now still one-shotting just about most things until I stopped right before the Don Quixote fight and went back, leveled up some stuff, and that was it. And in Dressrosa, you can't even leave until you're done with the story, and then immediately the end game starts. So you literally have no choice but to wait till you've beaten the game to go back and experience the rest of the game, like you wanted to go and check out some of the story missions and side missions and stuff like that. So if you go back to Alabasta, you're already over leveled. Water 7, you're already over leveled. When you go to Marineford, it's just side quests. You can't even go to the main side of the battlefield. You're just in the port town, which is just whack. It was boring as hell. And then you go back to Dressrosa and you see you have like 90 side quests, and that's why I stopped at the platinum, like trying to get the platinum for the game for the time being. I thought I was closer, but I'm at like 55% and I don't care. I just have to collect some cubes, do all the Dressrosa side quests, and do challenge mode, and then I'll have platinum the game. But that being said, I rate the game overall a 5 out of 10. It's not that good. I don't even think it's worth the purchase if you want to avoid it entirely. I don't blame you, because it's really like just boring and not fun. But they did make the game look really good. It looks fantastic. It's some of the best graphics I've ever seen. The story, if you're very lore driven and you want to be a theorist and you like the way theories pan out, you might like the story just because of the theories that can spawn from this, and that final boss being like an ancient sky weapon that's seemingly like a robot fish that flies in the sky shooting lightning. It's pretty cool, I guess. Not that cool after you destroy it effortlessly. But that is the review for One Piece Odyssey. A very beautiful disaster. Have a good one, everyone.